Welcome to the Spiritual Deep Dives podcast. This is Mariah Cruz. After millions of years, what happened to the biblical Lucifer and Satan, and what does this mean for us today? In this episode, we will reveal the hidden story of their final judgment, explain the karmic wave that's now sweeping our world, and how we can ride that wave to our victory. For thousands of years, there were ancient spiritual truths and mystical teachings passed down only to the highest initiates walking the path back to God. It hasn't been until recent times that this secret knowledge has been available to the masses. Our team spent over 40 years researching many diverse spiritual, religious, and scientific sources, recording the wisdom from the ascended saints and sages of East and West, tapping into the Akashic records and calling on God's Holy Spirit to reveal the spiritual truths and science behind the unseen forces that govern our lives. In this podcast, we will explore these teachings from a unique perspective that you probably have never heard before, and show practical ways you can integrate them into your life to resolve deep-seated personal problems, accelerate your soul's evolution, and help solve the world's dilemmas. Let's continue our series on fallen angels, Nephilim, and aliens. A quick note before we begin. If you're joining us for the first time, because of the sequential nature of this series, we recommend listening to the previous episodes before beginning this one. In our last episode, we were discussing the idea of separating out the tares from the wheat, known as the judgment. That's what we're going to continue with today. Jesus stated, "For judgment I am come." Those responsible for condemning or crucifying Jesus received the judgment, and that judgment was sealed upon them. In Jesus' parable, this harvest, in terms of our era and epoch, actually began in the closing decades before the Piscean Age ended, which was around 2001. This year also marked the conclusion of Jesus' mission. Although the period of the judgment has begun, it will be going on perhaps for another century until the fallen angels are completely gone from the earth. In other words, until they do not reincarnate any longer. The fallen ones, the asuras that we talked about in the last episode, the Nephilim, or whatever you want to call them, are all part of the same group that are going through their final judgment and will not be reincarnating. Instead, they are being taken to the court of the sacred fire on the god star Sirius. We believe this cycle actually began around 1975, which we will present more information about later. Also, listen to episode 10 for a description of the court of sacred fire. Anyone who's going through the judgment has no light left. They have completely severed themselves from the God source, from the higher self. They are in a state of rebellion and have been for ages. They have not changed, and therefore their identity cannot be sustained. What can only be sustained is the complete merging with the light of God. A person who is of the light will go back to the light. Where there is no light in the individual, there is darkness, and therefore the judgment takes place. They go through a trial at the court of the sacred fire. We marked the origin of the fall at about 250 million years ago, and here we are in the present day when these fallen ones are finally going through the second death. So why has it taken so long for them to be judged? It has to do with the momentum of light that these individuals had when they fell. Whether they were from the archangelic realms or from higher levels in the heaven world, they held tremendous attainment and light. In episode 1, we explained the chart of your divine self that was delivered through the messengers by the Ascended Masters. See the link to this chart in the notes of this episode. In this chart, there are various coloured spheres of light known as the causal body. These spheres surround the divine monad in the centre, which is our individual God presence. Now, the light of the causal body is pure attainment garnered through centuries of the right use of God's energy. When someone like Lucifer falls, their attainment is not just yanked away from them. They have it as a momentum of light, and it could take millions upon millions of years to deplete, not including the light that they steal from others along the way. Also, at any time during this period, there was an opportunity for any one of those fallen angels, even Archangel Lucifer or his lieutenant Satan, to turn around. They could have stopped what they were doing and changed their ways. It was unlikely, but it could happen. This is the mercy of God. These are the reasons why the judgment has taken so long to manifest and why we are currently living in very exciting times. From our understanding by the Ascended Masters, there has only been a few cases where those who were part of the original rebellion actually bent the knee to the Christ and turned their path around. They are known as the restored angels. So even though the fallen angels were cut off from the divine monad and causal body, their attainment is still within them at some level, and perhaps the cutting off process wasn't immediate. We don't know for sure, but the fact is, they had the ability to pull off incredible things right after the Great Fall, and when they were living among the root races already indigenous to this planet. They had tremendous power and authority, and would appear as gods, with a lowercase g, to the evolutions at that time because of the feats they were able to perform. Now, what we're going to reveal is what happened to some of these fallen ones who were the originators of the fall, specifically Lucifer, Satan, and their cohorts. So here we go. The Ascended Masters have revealed to us that Lucifer went through the final judgment and the second death in 1975. Now, you may be wondering, what were all the good archangels and their legions doing from the time of the fall until now? They were all busy bringing about the conditions where Lucifer could finally be taken. Lucifer was bound on April 16, 1975 by the majestic Archangel Michael. His trial lasted 10 days and was very similar to what we have here on Earth. There was a prosecutor, a defense, and several witnesses who testified. If interested, there are more details of this event available in various books by the Ascended Masters produced by the Summit Lighthouse. So there were a group of beings called the 4 and 20 Elders who presided as the judges in this trial. They are mentioned in several chapters of Revelation. They came to the unanimous conclusion that Lucifer was guilty of absolute rebellion, so he was consigned to the second death. What does the term second death mean? A description can be found in the book of Revelation, chapter 2, verse 11, chapter 20, verses 6 and 11 through 15, and chapter 21, verses 8 and 9. The Ascended Masters tell us that the second death is the complete cancelling out of the identity of what was once the soul, but has now become, for want of a better description, a black hole. There is absolutely no light left. There will never again be an individual identity known as Lucifer. It has been erased from existence. At his trial, Lucifer's countenance no longer had the great beauty of an archangel. He was thin and worn down, just a shell of his former self. There's an important distinction between the second death and the ascension we want to mention here. When you balance your karma, having paid your debts to life and fulfilled your divine plan, you make your ascension, and unlike the judgment, you retain your complete individual identity. Whatever you have become, that is your permanent identity. This is the unity of God amidst the diversity of His creation. You are one of the many sons and daughters, all with a unique attainment, all linked to the one God and free to advance as far as you would like to go. Now, there's another one who is the lieutenant of Lucifer. He's the one known as Satan. The Ascended Masters told us he too went through the final judgment and second death in 1982. He was cast into the lake of sacred fire mentioned in Revelation chapter 20, verse 10. So Satan and Lucifer are no more. As mentioned in episode 10, this lake of sacred fire is a magnificent lake of violet fire on the god star Sirius. It, of course, is in another dimension, not the physical plane. Misqualified energy, fallen ones, and so forth are cast into this lake and dissolved. It's worth mentioning that the idea of Lucifer and Satan burning forever in hell is not subscribed to in the teachings of the Ascended Masters. This is an orthodox doctrine and dogma that says not only the fallen ones, but anybody, even souls of light who have supposedly committed sins of a mortal nature, must go to hell. Now, the fallen ones have a great fear of the lake of fire because it's a place of purification and transmutation where all their evil is ended, completely transmuted or changed, where that energy is repolarized and goes back to what's known as the Great Central Sun. Regarding the fate of Satan, there weren't many details released about his trial. We can only assume that the Ascended Masters explained enough about the trial of Lucifer to be an adequate teaching on this process. We also wanted to mention that many of the fallen angels who followed Lucifer and Satan from the beginning were also bound and went through the judgment. There were millions of them. When the fall happened, it involved entire galaxies. Revelation 12 verse 4 basically tells us that 1/3 of the angels within these galaxies fell. So back on Earth, this judgment is a great clearing action and it affects the whole planet. Now, when that much darkness is removed, a vacuum is created. This void must now be filled with light. It cannot remain a void, and we don't want it filled with more darkness. Thankfully, these things are planned far ahead of time by the karmic board, ascended and cosmic beings, as to when and where these judgment events should take place. They are very specific about how these things happen and the timing of them. The cycles have to be exactly correct. Adjustments have to take place in all the various planes of matter so that the balance of light and darkness does not cause some kind of cataclysmic action. If this much darkness is taken but there's not enough light to fill it in, there could be major problems. Also, part of the equation is the fact that the karma of mankind is returning back to us and it's coming in cycles. This is also part of the judgment. It's important to note that through his mission and life, Jesus the Christ volunteered to hold back planetary karma that was about to descend upon the planet from the 12 previous ages. One age is approximately 2,150 years. Jesus gave his life to hold back 12 ages of karma, which is actually 25,800 years, to give us opportunity to grow spiritually and claim our inheritance as sons and daughters of God. So when the period of the judgment comes, which is now, when this karma is returned back to us for resolution and transmutation, we were supposed to be equipped to deal with it. We've had 2,000 years of spiritual development free from the weight and burden of over 25,000 years of returning karma. Now is our time to shine, but many are not prepared to help carry the weight of karma now descending upon this planet. This is why the violet flame was introduced to mankind in 1930 by the Ascended Master Saint Germain. Briefly, the violet flame accelerates the transmutation of personal and planetary karma. We won't go deeper into this right now because there's a lot of information already available about the violet flame. In fact, you can listen to the first series of this podcast, which is all about the violet flame. See the link in the notes. Now, as you probably already realise, what we've been discussing concerns not only the judgment of the fallen ones, but also the return of mankind's personal karma from this and all previous embodiments, which also needs to be resolved and balanced. The revelation that Jesus held back personal and planetary karma only for a cycle is obviously different than what the vast majority of people in the Christian community believe. They think the great avatar Jesus died on the cross to take all our sins away forever as long as we believe in him. But in reality, what the Ascended Masters are saying is that it was held back for a time, and now that karma is returning. The fact remains, only you can undo the karma that you created. It's cosmic law, and there's nothing we can do to change it. Again, Jesus gave us the opportunity to accelerate our spiritual growth so when the last 25,800 years of karma returned, we would be ready to deal with it. Yes, we can have intercessors like the great avatar Jesus, and sometimes the karmic board will mitigate our returning karma. Sometimes even our spiritual mentor, an ascended master, will hold a portion of our personal karma in order that we can gain more self-mastery. And importantly, giving violet flame decrees and meditations and serving others in need also help balance our karma. So all is not lost. The heavenly hierarchy is on top of the issue, and we have removed millions of fallen angels. Lucifer and Satan's lieutenants and main leaders were taken. This was a huge blow to their ranks. As you can imagine, the rank-and-file fallen angels are having an issue with this. So this has been a preparation for the incoming age of Aquarius. As mentioned, this judgment will probably be going on for perhaps another century, from now until all the fallen angels have gone through the second death, never to return again. And again, there's always the opportunity for some of them to say, "All right, let me do it over again. Let me go back into embodiment and I promise I'll change," which may or may not be granted because sometimes their karma is so great that there is no opportunity left, like that of Adolf Hitler. His karma was so bad that the suffering he would go through would be incomprehensible. He would have to re-embody on the earth for another maybe 2 million years, and in each embodiment, he would probably have to go through extreme suffering or something to that effect. But of course, when he did go through the change called death this time, his attitude before the karmic board was complete arrogance and anger. So he too went through the second death, and like so many other fallen angels, he is also no more. But some of the fallen angels will still be reincarnating because their time to be removed has not yet come. This is because, as mentioned, if all the evil was taken away from the planet in one fell swoop, it would actually cause tremendous cataclysms and mankind wouldn't learn anything. People have to realize, wait a minute, something's happening here. There are fallen ones on Earth. There's a power elite and they're making warfare against us in various ways. We have wars. We've had pandemics. We have the desecration of mothers and children. Something's up. Something isn't right. What's really happening? The awakening must come. But if the ascended masters took away all of the fallen ones and all the evil, most of the people of Earth would not have learned the lessons in absolute good and evil. So every single day, certain fallen ones are going through the second death. We're talking about billions and billions of individuals. But here's another important point. As light bearers, part of gaining our mastery in the physical dimension is understanding what is really going on in the world. Many are waking up. We have to evolve spiritually and ultimately make our ascension. The masters can't do it for us. Through our embodiments, we all have been involved with the fallen angels in one way or another. Part of gaining our self-mastery then is separating ourselves from their momentums, from their influences. It's our personal inner separation of the tares and the wheat which Jesus mentioned. Therefore, it's also important to realize that negative energies like rebellion, anger, or hatred that you think are part of your identity may very well not be. They could be a momentum you picked up from some fallen angel in this or another embodiment. Remember, you were created from pure love. Any thought or feeling that is less than that is not part of who you really are. But we shouldn't beat ourselves up over any negativity that we find coming out in our consciousness or expressions. When you can get to a point of not hanging on to negativity and instead striving daily to replace it with light and godly virtues, know that you are separating yourself from the tares and gaining your spiritual self-mastery. You're becoming more of what God is. This separation process isn't an overnight thing, but using the violet flame can accelerate the dissolution of this relationship with the fallen angels. This is the key. The point is, we are vulnerable because we still have ties to evil, the energy veil, and have to take a balanced approach. We can't just say, oh, this hatred I feel is from the fallen angels, not me. Or every time you have an issue, you say, it's not me, it's them who caused it. We need to have the perspective to realize that we did take on some of that hatred because we were vulnerable to it. But ultimately, as long as you have that divine spark that we talked about in other episodes, this will always overcome whatever the fallen ones may have implanted in your consciousness. Their manipulations will be undone, and the light will win. God always wins. Spirituality is the only key to defeating our own propensities, our own negative karma in the unconscious and subconscious mind. So the judgment of these fallen ones was also brought about because of the practice by so many who learned how to wield the science of the spoken word, whether through Hindu mantras, Buddhist mantras, the prayers of Muslims and Christians, of dynamic decrees, and even the prayer of a young child. Anything that has to do with asking God for help, calling to whichever saint or ascended being you can think of wherever you are, every application to the Godhead from whatever religion or person helped bring these things about. And many thousands of people around the world recognize that dynamic decrees are the most powerful of all prayer forms. These include many powerful mantras, calls and invocations for the judgment of the fallen ones that were given to us by the ascended masters. One of these decrees is called the judgment call. Now, when we refer to calling for the judgment of the fallen ones, for many thousands of years, the life streams of the earth were not necessarily in a position to literally judge the fallen ones, because the fallen ones had greater attainment. So when this magnificent invocation called the judgment call was revealed to us, we understood then that in the name of Jesus and in the name of our own Christ self, this judgment was indeed being called forth. This is the judgment of the fallen angels whose time is up according to their karmic cycles, the will of God and the cosmic councils. When this judgment call came out, reciting it is actually the action of the Christ self of everyone that is calling forth the judgment. The human ego, the human self, the outer human consciousness with its anger or desire for revenge is not what brings about this judgment. That is a most serious mistake, because if you are angry at the fallen ones, you then have a karmic tie to them. Therefore, when we invoke the judgment upon them, it is done in complete love. It is done in complete equilibrium. It is done from the heart, and it is the Christ self of us saying, just as Jesus said, "For judgment I am come." It is not our human self, but rather the I Am presence and the Christ self executing this judgment. So with all we just said, any light that's given from anyone from the heart with love for God can be used by the ascended beings to bring about the cleaning up of personal and planetary karma, and it can be used for the removal of various levels of fallen angels and their minions. So for now, we think this is a good place to end this episode. Catch our next episode where we will answer the question, what if the forbidden Book of Enoch holds the real backstory to Genesis 6, the Watchers, their hidden judgments, and the secret power you already carry inside of you to defeat them? Thank you for listening to Spiritual Deep Dives. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We'll catch you in the next episode.